Thank you. You know what? Somehow that song by Johnny Drill almost always has me singing along. I'll come to you someday. But on Thursday, yes, that's one day someday, President Muhammadu Buhari directed the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Governor Emefiele, to ban foreign exchange on food and fertilizer importation. The directive was given in order to empower local food and fertilizer production. But reacting to that directive, the Manufacturing Association of Nigeria expressed that the ban on foreign exchange for food might lead to inflation. We'll be taking a look at that as we begin the show today. And to help us see what this is all about is Sulaiman Arigbabu, who is the Executive Secretary, Heather Resource Center. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
In the course of the show, we're also expecting and hoping we'll have someone from the Nigerian Institute of Food and Technology, Oluwole Toye, who's the president. He'll be joining us in the course of the conversation. Mr. Arigbabu, what do you think? The president's directive, let's start from there, to ban foreign exchange for food and fertilizer importation, and the reaction of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria.
Yeah, thank you. It's I think everybody is playing their part. The president, of course, has to. The naira is under pressure. We don't have as much money as we ought to, so we need to rationalize the things that we bring into the country. So the things that we can do without, we need to be clear about that. However, the manufacturing sector cannot exist without bringing some of their production inputs from the abroad. If that is going to happen and there's a blanket ban on both luxury items and essentials, there's going to be a problem. Because even those things that we make in here, and we need the manufacturing sector to actually keep work and keep jobs, for citizens, for us also to have internal commerce, which is part of our economy. So it's a balance. What needs to happen is that the CBN needs to sit with the manufacturing sector and understand which is essential. So one man's essential item may be luxury to another. Even when you talk about drugs, that are banned, that are hard illicit drugs. Some of those things are inputs for some other manufacturing arms of pharmaceutical arms of manufacturing sector. So one man's luxury item is another man's essential. So there needs to be a balance in it. But yes, it is important that the president instructs the CBN that we can only import those things that we really, truly cannot do without. Otherwise, we'll continue to live in a fool's paradise.
Okay, but in all of this, are you considering the timing as well?
I think there's no other time that we have to do a lot of things than now. Because, yes, it's quite difficult. It's going to bring quite a lot of hardship on some citizens. There are things that we might consider luxurious, but for some people, that is all that they know how to, they use. But we are in a precarious situation, especially given the reality of this country with COVID-19, the way it has impacted on our economy, and also the fact that our economy has been on shutdown for quite a while. And then the price of oil is also not so favorable to Nigeria. Unfortunately for us, we have refused to diversify our economy. We have only paid lip service to doing that. So there's no time that's going to be a good time. The best time for us to do all of this was years and decades ago. We failed to do it there. So anytime we are serious about it now is the best time.
So, Mr. Babu, are you saying that because you didn't do something when you were supposed to, the day you decide to do it, you should now go with it drastically? Because there's this school of thought that believes that this directive is too stringent, as in it's like now. And then, as you mentioned it, some of those manufacturers need some of these inputs. So it's as though it's a blanket, or are there certain clarifications that are not out in the public?
So that's why I said that the manufacturing sector needs to sit with the president of the governor of the CBN, and the National Council for Food Security to have clarity. That all of these conversations started from when the CBN said it was going to place a ban on the importation of maize. And I tell you, that is a conversation that is not easy to have. If you refuse to place a ban on importation of maize, local growing of maize will never thrive. Those who grow maize in country do not thrive because they cannot compete with what comes from outside. Now, if you insist that you are going to place a ban on importation of maize, the manufacturers, those who make feed meals, those who make some of those things, who use maize to make other things that we use, especially in the poultry and fish industry, will have to buy more expensive from the local farmers. So it's a tough terrain to navigate. But still, we have to do something about it because Nigeria has the capacity to actually manufacture, to actually grow enough maize for local consumption. If we pay attention to maize, the much we have paid to rice. And also, if we think about what substitutes can we have, so where do other kind of feed, input come in to replace or to reduce the volume of maize that we need? So we need to have a dedicated program for those things. So if this is the conversation, it's a different thing. But if the conversation is about what I understand the president to be saying, that there are food being imported to this country that we really do not need. There are exotic fruits coming into the country. There are lifestyle consumption that is being serviced by this class foreign exchange that we have. So if that is what he's talking about, I think it's something that ought to have been done long ago. It's something that government has been saying that they were doing before now. We don't know how we keep coming to the same thing that we have said we did time back. So it's not a conversation that can wait. It's something that has to happen. We need to prioritize what we buy with our scarce resources.
Okay, the matter of communicating this policy as or directive as the case may be, and also the consequence management system. As you said, these are conversations that I've had that have been going on for a long time. But we always come back to that point where we say we're banning foreign exchange for this. So why do you think we have that discrepancy?
Well, you will agree with me that particularly for this government, communication, social marketing of their policies is not a strong point. It's not something they have paid much attention to.
Has there been a government that has had that has had effective social marketing of policies?
Well, let's say Nigeria has not been really lucky with that. Because if you look at other climes, this conversation is generated from the bottom up, and when the conversation gets to where decisions are made, it will not be strange to most people, especially people whose sector will be affected. So I don't expect, for instance, that manufacturing sector is getting to know about the plan to place a ban on certain items until when the president made the announcement. Now, these are conversations that are needed to grow from those who will be most impacted. Then by the time the president was making that announcement, you don't expect the manufacturing sector to come out like, oh, we didn't know about this. You would expect that they would have been saying, oh, we think they should do otherwise. It's not that we're not consulted. But usually here, consultation is not something that government has taken as a priority. And that's a problem, really. Because there are so many policies of government that are not as bad as they sound. Especially when you then have the details of how they reach the decision and what the intendment is. But because it just hits you from the headlines, it's open to conjecture. People, give it their own interpretation, and before you know it, it becomes controversial. But by the time we step back and then have the conversation that should have preceded the decision, you would realize that it's not as bad as it looks.
That conversation, again, still that matter of communication. We do know that over time we had government talk about grants and incentives for different agricultural practices, the rice industry. But at the end of the day, this matter. This ban on importation of food items, is it food? The question is it food items or food inputs? Like the farmers will tell you they need to bring in tractors, they need to bring in equipment they'll use to do the kind of farming that would really feed the nation. Because so far, basically what we're doing subsistence farming. So would this also affect the other side?
Oh, definitely
So
not.
clarity also is needed here.
Yeah, definitely not. In all fairness to government, there's a lot of good concession to the agri sector. Even to import agricultural equipment, there is a huge concession for that. And this is a government also that realized the need for mechanization of the sector. We saw what's happened with rice in Niger and in Kebbi. So the reality is that you need to mechanize the sectors conveniently so that it can produce. Right now, we are probably doing, I tell you for free, in Nigeria, without adding 1 extra acre of land, Nigeria can probably produce 8 to 9 times what we are currently producing for most of the things that we produce.
Okay, let me just interrupt you there and ask you to pause a bit. We'll take a moment. We'll come back. We'll look at, you mentioned rice. Let's see how much of impact all the inputs in the rice industry have brought forth, because the cost of rice appears to continue to rise. And we'll look at that when we come back from this break. Do stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. Wasborn says a major factor working against food sufficiency in Nigeria is insecurity. A lot of farmers are not able to go to their farms because of kidnappers and bandits. Government should tackle the problem. Festus says COVID-19 lockdown, flooding in the north, and droughts in the southwest have all had negative impacts on this farming season. But it doesn't mean we should import food with our scarce dollars. We must continue to look inwards. Now, Sulaiman, before we went in that book, we were talking about the rice inputs, the inputs that have gone to the agricultural sector, particularly rice, for instance. There's this grant from the CBN to rice farmers. All manner of packages have come in. But at the same time, now some people might not agree with this, you still find foreign rice everywhere.
Well, maybe not everywhere.
And the cost of rice.
Yes.
Even though the production of rice in Nigeria has increased, but the cost appears to be increasing every other day.
That's a problem, really, because our paddy production in Nigeria is suboptimal and is far below our requirements. If you remember a couple of weeks now, maybe just about 2 weeks ago on your station, channels did feature some women in Niger State who were producing rice, and they were supported by a multinational agency. And that took their production capacity, it multiplied it by about over 7 times. So that's why I say it's suboptimal. So where the quantum per acre yield that we are having is far below what would take us to be optimal and self-sufficient. So you need such intervention across board. That's why I posit that we will not add 1 inch of land to grow the food that we need. Why the rise of price keep going up is that there is not enough paddy in the country. So all this, don't import, don't do this. We know that paddy still has to come into this country. For many of the big mills, Lagos is trying to have the biggest mill probably in Africa. There are mills all over, and there are small-scale mills like the one that your studio featured. So for these mills to have enough paddy, we are still having to bring paddy from across West Africa. This is something we need to do.
Why are we having the challenge? We're using rice here now, for instance, because rice is like a staple in every part of Nigeria. So why are we having that challenge of paddy? I mean, you hear Cross River State, for instance, has a rice seedlings plant. They also are building a mill. I don't know I'm not too sure it's ready. There are different states. Kebbi, Lagos, and have Lake Rice. Ebonyi. I mean, even before Nigeria started talking about rice, Ebonyi has been growing rice. Enugu has rice. Kano has rice. Nasarawa, Niger, Taraba, all these states have rice. So why are we having challenges with paddies?
Okay, so there are a number of issues around there. First is that, to a large extent, Nigerian agriculture, to a large extent, is still rain-fed. So the planting season is limited because rice is a crop that you could plant about 3 times in a year. But if your agriculture is largely rain-fed, it means that you are restricted to the rainy season. And if you look at the rain pattern this year, for a long time the rain did not come, and now that it's coming with flooding. Neither flooding nor drought is good for rice production. Also is the fact that we are not making the best use of natural eco services. So all the places along our river basin
Flood
authorities, the floodplains, these are places that should have been dedicated for specific farming, like, for instance, rice. But we do not have a policy that supports that. So Lagos, for instance, as small as Lagos is, Lagos has a lot of places that can grow rice. But Lagos does not see itself as a place to grow rice. Yes, there's some rice growing in some parts of Lagos, especially Badagry. You know, of course, it's still like Lagos can afford to, say, I'm going to look at the milling and the marketing and the processing and all of that. That's fine. But we have enough land. We are blessed with the kind of weather that could, grow good rice. But we need to support it with science. We need to support it with technology. And we need to have a national commitment to say that, okay, if it's going to take us 2 years to reach there. I mean, we stopped the importation of rice quite a while ago. It has improved our sufficiency, but we have not gotten to that state. And what we are talking about is the rice for consumption. We are not even talking about rice for industrialization. Because if the manufacturing sector start to see how they can probably substitute rice for some of the things that they need, they will be in bigger trouble. Because the cost of rice for eating at home will climb. So, yes, government has devoted a lot of money there, but we are not using the right, we are not supporting with the right knowledge. We are not supporting it with sufficient input. And that's why I keep going back to that report. Those women have been growing rice for a long time, supported by government. But by the time FAO came in and said, okay, you could try this variety and you could try these agronomic practices, their stories changed. And we need to replicate and multiply that across the land.
In other words, before the ban on importation of food or foreign exchange, all these things need to be brought back in. Like the ministry, what are the Ministry of Agriculture doing? The extension workers, are they still available to go into the farms? Do we need international agencies to come in to help our farming, to help our agricultural production increase?
Well, I mean, the international agencies that did that is in country. It happens everywhere. It's
Granted,
part of knowledge.
but we have departments or faculties of agriculture in almost all of our universities. We have colleges of agriculture too.
And we even have IITA that's doing a lot around Africa.
So are we transferring the knowledge from the citadels of learning into the field? That's sharing with the local communities.
That's a tough conversation in Nigeria. We have not been able to take full advantage of knowledge available in our various institutions of learning. And we have not even been able to help our institutions of learning to optimize. So we have dedicated research institutes for various crops and livestock. But when you look at their budget, it's not the kind of budget that makes you come out with brilliant outcomes. It's kind of budget that keeps you there to run a civil service, and to buy a few things in the office. Our universities, we are not helping them to access such grants, that will make them come out with fantastic. Yes, and indeed, in spite of what I've said, a lot of things still come from these places, but there's no linkage between the gown and the town, between the institutions and the farmers, between the institutions and the manufacturers. So a lot of retooling, restructuring need to happen for our educational sector. It needs to happen for our agricultural sector. And, for the thing you said about rice, the truth is Nigeria can actually grow enough rice to take care of ourselves, to probably become a hub for Africa or West Africa, and to make rice become a substitute for some of the things we are doing. that's going to industrialization. But this needs to be driven by a national determination, which I am not really seeing. There is a lot of work, a lot of energy, to improve, but we are not working strategically, and I don't think we are carrying everybody along sufficiently. So we are talking about, for instance, do we have adequate extension service? The recent decision by the federal government to employ 1,000 persons per local government is a beautiful initiative. It will help to mop up some of the unemployed. But how are we going to strategically deploy them? Do we have a vision for agriculture to say, oh, we want to improve this and that in the agri sector, and from this 1,000 we are deploying for every local government, for instance, or where they are most needed, certain number of this employment. Federal government came up with the one where graduates
Empower,
thank you. And on that Empower program, there is the portion dedicated to extension workers. Now, when we interfaced with that system, we realized that there are two issues. One is that people are deployed to go and do extension without backup, without support. So not that, sometimes many of our young people will go through universities and it's not as if you have become really proficient. You have just been able to study and come out of the university. So I'm going to just push you to go and support the agri sector. You need to, one, train such people, and also give them backup so that if they need to clarify issues, there is a way they can do that so that they can give updated information to the farmer. So that is in there. Second is that the federal government is paying. Federal government don't own land, they don't own the farmers. These people exist in the states. We did not see enough linkage with states to ensure that many. Take Lagos State, for instance. I had a conversation like 2 years ago with about 20 extension workers, Empower extension workers. And they are saying, we are here, but nobody is calling. We don't even know where to go to.
Because they don't know where the farms are?
They don't know. There's no coordination between the State Ministry of Agri and the agency running that program. So many times you then wonder, we like to talk about big, fantastic ideas. But do we link them to, now we are doing a vision for 2050. The other visions that we had that we did not actualize, are we able to link these intervention programs that we bring into seeing that this one that we are doing, we had X amount of progress to this particular program. If we have a program for rice, any intervention we are bringing in the economic space, in the workspace, in the educational space, do we have a vision of how it links, to bringing, taking us closer to actualizing our vision for the various aspects of our economy that we have articulated? It's always not there. And that's the biggest problem that we need to deal with.
When we started earlier, I mentioned something about grant incentives and then consequence management system. You've talked about the fact that, yes, good ideas, good policies, but implementation is a problem. And then the buy-in is another side of it. What is wrong with the buying side? How is it that the people are not buying into some of these ideas that government's coming up with? Is it a question of they are not seeing the examples? Or the government is not, or the authorities are not using some of those things they are trying to sell to the people? Would that make any difference?
So I mentioned something about social marketing earlier. And it's a concept that is needed for every intervention of government. As long as it's people, not machines, that will interface with that intervention, you need to properly sell it to them. So we're talking about when the president said, okay, we are not going to be providing dollar to import food, and the manufacturing sector seems to be taking unawares. So that tells you that that conversation did not start where it should have started from. So, and if things don't start where they should have started from, it's usually, you find that there's alignment becomes problem. So that's a challenge. Another challenge is that we seem to be quite haphazard about many things that we do. We cannot state, for instance, the federal government says we are employing 1,000 persons across local government. But one would have expected that policy to, that intervention to say, oh, and we are doing this because we want it to tie into our vision on this, our vision on that. So people are able to see that everything we are doing is deliberate, is structured, is well thought through. Whereas as if somebody brings a memo to the Federal Executive Council and say, you know, we should do this, and then we adopt it. But we do not ask and interrogate, okay, how does this link to ABC? I'm not saying that thoughts and thinking do not go into some of these interventions. But I'm saying, how robust is this thinking that goes into it? How robust in the sense that how does it lead to every other things we want to do in various... we need to see the linkages. And it is when people see the linkages and they see how where they are on the value chain, the impact of the role they play or chose not to play. When people start to see themselves in the picture of things, then ownership, becomes a lot more easier. And when people own things, they usually are likely to go eat the whole hog. Otherwise, people just see it as another program of government. Something nice is coming from federal government. And then it comes, people take the benefit they can out of it and leave it without thinking of, okay, has it achieved? We all need to know where the destination is. We all need to know where the goal is so that everybody can see themselves, as being part of...
There are some people who are concerned that some organizations like HEDA, for instance, are not helping in any way. I mean, if government has been talking about this, Boye says all these notice gaps between what government's supposed to do and unseen opportunities, what is, why is. He's asking, why is your organization, for instance, not drumming these opportunities in? If government is not social marketing, what about the non-governmental organizations who are in the agricultural sector, in the manufacturing sector? Can they not help to paint a clearer picture for the citizenry?
Yeah, you are right. The president gave an instruction to his appointees recently and said, let us blow our own trumpet. Well, because we are in the NGO, we usually do not blow our own trumpet. But indeed, our sector is doing a lot. I tell you, for instance, we worked through this year with the Nigerian Meteorological Agency. Because, again, you find that in Nigeria, there are capacities existing in certain places that are not fully utilized. So every year in January, especially in the last 5 years, NIMET will come and say, this is the expected rain pattern for this year. But after that, and then they go a little step further, because they have a Director of Applied Meteorological Services, under which you have an agrometeorological department. They tell you the implication for agriculture. And NIMET has a modeling system that can tell different states, you can plant this year. This is the time to plant. This is the time to use fertilizer. Don't use it. Information. And it is available there. It comes out in January. It doesn't get to the state. NIMET then writes to states, government, state ministries of agriculture, states this and that we can do this for you. Can we step it further? No response. This year we came in and we were able to work with NIMET to step down this information for the 19 northern states. Okay? I think the FAO also worked with NIMET, and one other organization in Kaduna worked with them to do a couple of states as well. And the difference this made in the lives of those who got the information cannot be compared to those who didn't get it. This August break, for instance, if states in the southwest especially had been proactive enough to step down that information to their farmers, the complaint that farmers had because I tell you for free, I interact with farmers every day, this August break, many went into debt because they did not have the information that the August break will be a bit lengthy and it's not a good time to plant certain crops. So they did, and now they are in debt.
This one's a huge gap where good policy, the players in the industry are not getting that information. When you talked about the institutions, you talked about the distance between the gown and the town. That interface, with this new policy of government or directive from the president, which the CBN is already implementing, and a lot of people are clamoring what's going to happen and all. And guess what? The prices of things have still gone up again, even with that new directive. At what point would this whole end?
It has to end at some point, really.
How would we get it to end? How do we get government houses, for instance, to stop importing the biscuits and the food and all of that they drink? How do we get there?
So again, it comes to what's our national philosophy.
Please. Okay.
Comes to what's our national philosophy, what's our national objective, what do we agree as a people that want to achieve. If we want to be treating our problem piecemeal, we will be at it for a long time. But if we are all resolved that, okay, we are going to tighten our belt, especially with the reality of COVID, we've known now that the cost of government, for instance, can reduce drastically. This is one of the, unfortunately, but this is one of the good things that have come from the pandemic experience. So we know that a lot of things can reduce. So it's not for government to tell citizens to tighten our belt. It's for government to start by example in their individual capacities and in their official capacity. We need to see that. Now, aside from that, you need to show the entire picture to citizens. You need to, don't just give us information. We didn't need to learn about that policy when the president made the announcement. And don't forget, the president has also blamed the increasing cost of food to unscrupulous middlemen. Middlemen have always been there. If you allow them, they will be there and take over everything. It is states that will make policies that will help the farmers and help the consumer and help the manufacturing sector to get the best of the of commerce.
Okay.
So middlemen will always be there.
I think that's a good place for us to hang it there. Thank you so much, Suleiman Aribabu, Executive Secretary, Heather Resource Center. Thank you for coming in this morning. Fortunately, we couldn't get Oluwaletoye, President, Nigeria Institute of Food and Technology, to join us. But that's our show. That's the segment for now. We'll take a moment and we'll be back. Do stay with us.